Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up. There's a new movie out by director Peter Jackson, who's famous for Lord of the Rings and other wonderful films. And it's a movie about the Beatles. It's a documentary called Get Back. And Jackson found about 200 hours of little known footage that was taken during one of the Beatles' major recording sessions. And he captured the Beatles at their finest. Now, the film was receiving critical acclaim and popular acclaim, huge acclaim, because he's showing the Beatles at their best, at their most joyful and connected and mutually supportive. There was another film that preceded it years ago called Let It Be, I believe, in which they captured another recording session, but they captured the darkest moments when the Beatles were fighting, arguing, and bickering. And that kind of cast them in a negative light as they were about to break up. This film, however, shows them and at their at their greatest. I've seen clips of it. It's delightful. Now, why am I telling you this? Paul McCartney, when he saw this new film Get Back, was asked his opinion. He said, "Well, I loved it." He said, "Maybe I didn't break up the Beatles after all." Now, there's a popular notion that he was in part responsible for the end of the Beatles. And what he was saying was, when I saw this new version of how great we were at our best, I remembered the wonderful things about our band. I remember how much I loved John Lennon. I remember how well we were getting along. He says, that is the reality I wish to remember instead of the guilty person who was responsible for the breakup. So what does this have to do with you and me? Well, you and I also have different versions of our past. We have a negative, judgmental, perhaps guilty version of our past. And we also have an empowering, positive, uplifting version of our past. We don't just have one past, we have many different events, and we can lump some of them together and say we really messed up. And we can lump others together and say, wow, everything I did was empowering me and led me to this moment. Maybe I'm not as bad a person as I thought I was. Maybe I'm not guilty. Maybe I don't have to be ashamed of my past, but I could bless the highest moments of my past and define those as myself, those as the pivotal moments that led me to be who I am today. So which past would you prefer? So we really don't create the present by the past. We create our past by the version of our past that we're looking at in the present. Got it? So at every moment, you're choosing which past you wish to own. Now, I had a great lesson in this many years ago. In high school, I used to walk to school with my buddy named George. And one day during our senior year, I just casually put my arm around him as an act of friendship. And George did not like this. So he was uncomfortable and he threw my arm off of his shoulder. And I felt kind of weird about this. I didn't say anything. Well, years went by. We both went off to college in our lives. And I always remember that awkward moment when I put my arm around him. He didn't like it. That was one of the prime memories, one of the last memories. Well, 30 years later, at least, I get a call in my office and my assistant said, George called and he said he misses you terribly and he wishes he could walk to school with you again. So I got in touch with George, and next time I was in New York, we had lunch. And I said, I just got to tell you, I feel kind of weird about that moment when we walked to school together and I put my arm around you. Didn't like it. He said, Alan, he says, I don't remember that at all. He says, all I remember is that you used to wait for me every day, even in the rain. Wow. I was really blown away when he said that, because here were 30 years I was holding on to this one tiny, insignificant, dark memory that he didn't even remember. The only place that memory lived was in my mind, and it was completely unnecessary because it had no ramification in his life or mine, except that I chose to hang on to it. And in that moment, I released it, and my whole past with my friend George became new. So you might want to think about what events in your past are you defining as your past, and what events could you choose instead? There's a cute story about a sour old priest who heard that there was a woman who was channeling Jesus Christ, and he didn't believe it. He wanted to discredit her. So he went to see her and he asked her, "Is it true that you talked to Jesus?" "Yes." "Would you ask him a question for me?" "Okay." "Would you ask him, what was the sin that I committed when I was in the seminary many years ago?" She said, "All right, I'll ask him. Come back in a week and I'll tell you." The priest comes back a week later and says, "Did you ask Jesus what was the sin I committed in the seminary?" "Yes." "What did he say?" He said, "I forgot." In other words, this priest was the one who was hanging on to his sin, but Jesus had no concept of it. Jesus was all about forgiveness and release. The idea of sin and punishment and guilt and fear are not an element in the mind of Jesus or any great spiritual master, anybody who loves you. And so wouldn't it be wonderful if you and I could shift our vision from being judgmental of ourselves to seeing us through the kindness and the acceptance and the grace through which other people view us? In many cases, other people see the best in us and they love us more than we love ourselves. Someone said that a friend is someone who sees through you and enjoys the view. And we think, well, if somebody saw through me, they'd see my darkness and my errors and my wayward actions. But the truth is that we see them far more than others. Other people have let us off the hook a long time ago, far more than we've let ourselves off the hook. And so the golden rule, as you know, is love thy neighbor as yourself. And a lot of us are better at loving our neighbor than ourselves. We forgive other people. We overlook their errors. We continue to hang out with them even if they mess up. And at the same time, we're beating ourselves. We're hurting ourselves in ways that we would never hurt our neighbor. I remember once I dropped a glass in my kitchen and it broke. And out of these words came out of my mouth came these words: "You idiot, you clumsy idiot." And I would never say that to anybody else. If somebody else dropped a glass, I'd say, "Well, so what? Let's get on with our life. No big deal." But I was harsher on myself than I was on anybody else. So is it possible that you too are not loving your neighbor as you love yourself? You're loving your neighbor more than you love yourself. So a lot of us could use a good dose of self-acceptance, couldn't we? Our own worst enemy. So now what if we took this week and every time we thought of a mistake or error or sin we've done in our past, we decided to take another view of it. I believe in Arabic, the word for mistake is take another view. In other words, when you make an error, find some way to reframe it so you see yourself in a higher light. Now, I'm big on reframing. This is what we teach our coaches, one of the best techniques of coaching. And I was, I don't know if I told you guys this already or not, but I was coaching somebody, and this fellow had a new girlfriend, and the girlfriend's mother didn't like him as a new boyfriend because this girlfriend had gotten divorced not long ago, and the mother wished the daughter had never gotten divorced. So she resented the divorce and she resented the new boyfriend. So my client was trying to make peace with this and thought, well, I was really upset about my girlfriend's mother not liking me. He said, I kind of found things wrong with her. He says, then I thought, well, if it wasn't for this mother, my girlfriend wouldn't be on the planet. She gave birth to her. So I should really be indebted and grateful to this mother for bringing this beautiful love into my life. So in that moment, the mother switched from being a devil to being an angel. So we can certainly apply that to the people in our life. But what if we applied it to our own life? What if you went through all of your past and you found the things that you did that were quote sinful and you reframed them as sincere calls for love? Course in Miracles says that every human act is either a pure expression of love or it's a call for love. And when you're not expressing love purely, you're calling for love. So if you stole something or you had an affair or you did something that seemed unkind, it was your unconscious way of reaching out for the love you weren't giving yourself, or you weren't getting in your relationship. So everybody, the Buddha said that everybody's suffering somehow. And then there was an Irish poet who said, or a Gaelic poet who said, be kind to everyone because everyone is fighting some inner battle. We all have some inner battle that's going on, don't we? Some conflict, some angst, something where, someplace where we feel like we're missing love. And we all reach out for it. Some reach to drugs or sex or drinking or gambling or obsessive shopping. And there's a long list of ways that we reach out for love. But what if we solve them all in one fell swoop by reaching in for love? We said, hey, that was a mistake. I wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I was young. I didn't know any better. I was learning. I was on exploration path. I was trying to figure out what life is. And I did this thing that was kind of a mistake that led me on a new path. But, I wouldn't do it again, hopefully. But that was my way of learning. And I learned some lessons from it that have made me a better person in the long run. A lot of people in my classes and coaching sessions are 12 steppers, and they've been Alcoholics Anonymous or various 12-step groups. And a lot of them say that was the hardest time in my life, but the course correction it gave me changed my life forever. When I had to dig in and get in charge of my life and call on higher power, then I became like a new person. This is what Jesus meant when he said you have to be reborn. The old self dies away and something new shows up. Now, it's not really new because it's your original true self. But that layer, that dust, that mud that was covering you gets washed away, and you emerge like a butterfly from the cocoon as a brand new person. So even that quote sin contributed to your healing. And some people I know reframe sin as SIN, self-inflicted nonsense, which means that we beat ourselves up for what we believe are our sins when they're really just errors. And the people I know in 12-step programs are among the most faithful I know. Their connection to higher power is so strong that they're guided, and they pray and they meditate and they ask for guidance, and they do the straight and narrow path because the pain they experienced led them to reach for something higher. So if your quote sins and mistakes led you to reach for something higher and you found something higher, then how about celebrating it as a step towards your healing and awakening and enlightenment? I love the story of Jesus forgiving the adulterous woman. They're all about to stone her, and he said, you who's out without sins, cast the first stone, and they all walked away. And then he said to the woman, the adulterous woman, who has condemned you now? And she said, no one. He said, neither do I. So in that moment, Jesus demonstrated he's a teacher of grace. And any spiritual master teaches grace more than karma. That the law of grace supersedes the law of karma. So how about this week, if you and I give ourselves some grace? How about if we cut ourselves a break? How about if we look back on our billions of experiences we've had in this lifetime, and we selectively sift the ones that are loving and empowering, or we selectively reframe the ones that weren't loving and empowering, and we call them a call for love, and we give ourselves a new past. So in that moment of Paul McCartney watching that new video, in a sense, he got a new past. And God bless Peter Jackson for reframing the Beatles as ending their career together on a note of love and healing. And we'll all end our careers together on a note of love and healing. No matter how many mistakes you make, Course in Miracles tells us that a happy outcome to all things is sure. So think of anything that's bugging you or deterring you or hurting you now. Think of the worst thing that you've ever done. Take a moment now, tune in. What is your biggest sin? What is the thing that you judge yourself more for the most? And what if that experience seems like a sin only from one angle, from one viewpoint? What if you could walk to the other side or re-edit it and find footage that demonstrated it wasn't just a sin, and maybe it was just a mistake, and maybe it was just a powerful learning experience. So in this moment, all of your sins are being released. You are receiving forgiveness. You're receiving grace. You're becoming a new person. It's not your fault. The problems of the world are not your fault. The perception of the world is what's hurting you. But in a moment, you can shift perception. You can have a miracle. And as Paul said, change can come in the twinkling of an eye. You can be made a new person in one moment of awakening that heals your entire past because you're seeing from an entirely new viewpoint. And in that moment, you can truly get back. Get back to where you once belonged. That's the first sign of that. That's the refrain of the song. Get back to where you once belonged. Okay. Hope this is helpful to you. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you again soon. Take care. Love you lots.